So I'm Ryk Neethling. I'm the CTO for Send Payments. Send Payments is a global infrastructure as a service provider for payments. So it's a very regulated space. It's a space that is tightly monitored by the likes of Austrac and APRA in Australia, which means that we don't have a lot of freedom to make silly mistakes. I think it's important to just give that introduction because I don't work unshackled, is what I'm trying to say. So there's oversight into what we do. Auditors will look specifically at how we do things using AI. So taking that step and moving from there into AI, I would like to say that I had it all figured out. The reality is I didn't have it all figured out. I really had to learn as I go. I'm talking now sort of around 16 months ago. So it's been a while. That's really, AI agents weren't even a thing back in the day. At that point in time, there were discussions about it, but there was nothing really there to basically for anybody to look forward to at that stage. Everybody was speculating. So the predominant use cases in the market at that point in time was the likes of your large language models, such as ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, Anthropic, and so forth. There were a few of those that were available back then. Microsoft has certainly started pushing really hard on its Microsoft Copilot product. And since we are a Microsoft subscriber using Microsoft 365 services in our business, it was an easier segue into it. So with Microsoft Copilot, there were all the hype around it. I ended up subscribing for one Microsoft Copilot license. I started experimenting with it because there was the hype of what it can do and could do and will do, plus then also all the scaremongers saying, oh, it's going to be a big security risk. It's going to blow the world up. Everybody's going to find your data. So for me, it was important to make sure that, we don't end up on the front page for the wrong reasons. That's very important. I think every technology officer out there it's important for you to always consider the risks. Consider it and move forward. You can always mitigate risk. You can always think of, if this goes wrong, what do I do? And I think a lot of times when you apply security principles, you almost have to think in a way, it will happen, what do I have in place to make sure that the blast radius is contained and not as big as it potentially could be. So the first thing I started doing was basically throwing prompts at it that security experts were putting out there. These are the things, if there's going to be data leakage, these are the prompts you need to test. So I tested it and fortunately for us, I've at that point in time done quite a decent job of actually putting proper security boundaries in place. So that's where I started with writing an AI strategy for Send Payments. And I started small. I started thinking about what AI could do for us in technology. And I have to say here, I cheated. I used ChatGPT to say, this is who I am. So I just want to say we had a paid version of ChatGPT at that point. So I purchased the paid version because the free versions will throw your data into the public model to train. I gave it information about who we are as a business, what we're doing, where we operate. It's important, the context is very important. The regulatory frameworks we're under. And then I explained a little bit about our technology team, the teams that we have internally. So I described at a high level the org structure, so to speak. And large language models are incredibly good at actually extrapolating information from what you give it. So from that, I basically said I'm a CTO and I'm basically trying to stand up an AI strategy for my technology team. And it spat a wonderful document out to me. Like, honestly, it was like, I would say, even in hindsight, almost flawless, but it gave me the foundations. And I think you need to catch what I'm saying here. It did the 70–80% heavy lifting for me right there and then. Instead of me staring at a blank screen for hours, I was able to just start right there with a pre-filled template, so to speak. And I had to make a few tweaks. But the wonderful thing about that is it serves a little bit like an incubator. It just primes your imagination for what is possible, and you begin to think big and large, and you get quite excited about what it can do for your technology team. And then based on my experience and knowledge that I have about the rest of the business, I started writing AI strategies for each section of the business, whether they were risk and compliance, legal, the CFO office, and all the other functions in the business. What I ended up with was something that was largely probably 90% right. I then circulated that at an executive level to the exec leads and gave them, I circulated in detail what we're going to do from a technology perspective. And then I handed them theirs and said, there is yours, please own it. Talk to me if you need to, but write your own strategy. But then we all collated into one big document. We peer reviewed each other's work. Because of my experience at that point in time and me immersing myself in AI, I had probably more crazy ideas to put in there, which they were probably a little bit more conservative. I've also been, constantly following along with AI master classes, and especially there are some fantastic LinkedIn forums available for these AI, for AI large language models and what they do. So I've been immersing myself in that, and one key quote that I remember reading, and then I heard it later on repeat at a seminar I went to, was, look, plan for something in AI, and even if the technology or the ability to do it is not there yet, just plan as if it's there. And by the time you get there, the chances are that it will be available. And I can honestly say that that's been true. Moving on to change management. The strategy then informed the fact that I will write a policy, and the policy is important. I will not skip this step, especially if you're in a regulated environment. And you don't have to be too elaborate on your policy, but you have to touch the right points. What are the guardrails? What are the things you put in place to make sure that you have responsible AI? What are the structures in your organization? What's the oversight you're going to put in place for that? Security. Security is a big thing in AI. You've got to make sure that it is secure. You don't want to expose endpoints or chat agents on the World Wide Web where a potential attacker can get to it, or just a competitor, and they can extract all your valuable IP. It's important to pay attention to those things. Then talk about your development life cycle. And this is important very much because what's happening is where you used to have very technical software engineers who write code at a very low level, then compile it, and when the business get it, they see a pretty screen with a fancy button, they click it and it does a lot of things. But if they want to change what the button do when they click on it, they typically have to raise either a support request with a vendor or the internal developer team, their product team, and they go away and they commission the workforce to make the changes. So by nature, that part of your business have always had really mature and good development life cycles. There's proper staging gates that everything goes through, from making sure that you cover your reporting needs, your quality assurance, acceptance criteria, all those things. But in the AI world, all of a sudden, you don't operate at that level, you operate at a much higher level. And depending on the tools you use, you can have very low code environments. And I think, for example, Copilot, Microsoft Copilot or Copilot Studio will fit in that, where you have non-technical people. You give them drag and drop ability to create any AI agent, from AI agent that sits and read your mailbox, that when an email comes in, it can do certain actions, and you can perform many incredible tasks with it. But for example, if it's not looked after, that email that's very sensitive, you could potentially, the agent could send it out to a competitor if you're not careful. So all of a sudden, those life cycles and boundaries that your typical software engineers are used to, your business is not used to them. They're just used to, hey, I need to solve this problem, open up a spreadsheet, paste the values in there, got the formulas, and pump it out. There are no checks and balances in that process. There's nothing there. What I decided from a start is we will have a very small group of people that we give that ability. So part of my strategy document also spoke about AI champions. And what do I mean by that? So we decided, look, the reality is AI is an emerging technology. There are not a lot of people out there that can help your organization, and those who are out there will charge squillions of dollars to help you. So we followed a train the trainer model. So at this point in time, I was the expert, so to speak, on AI in our business. But I couldn't become the single choke point for the business, and certainly I didn't want to be the one with all the knowledge. It'll be exhausting. If there's no problem that people have to solve in their workflows, they're not going to look for a solution. So you telling them AI can help them do their job better, and most of the time it's over their head, it's like water off a duck's back, it's a nice conversation, and they move on just doing the same thing they've done before. So I had to find a way to really begin to drum up AI in the business, get people excited about it. So I started with some brown bag sessions that I invited everybody in the business to, and show them some of the cool things that it can do, and really got them excited. And I just use Copilot and ChatGPT. I use some very practical examples that I know are existing workflows in the business. So I find these workflows, and I also drew back from the strategy document that they've written, and I found these examples and I brought it to life for them. And I found that especially when I did it in a real life demo, showed them this is how you start, and 2-3 minutes later you actually get this result. You really had the wow factor. So I began to build that hype. So by the time this took about 2 months, and about 4 or 5, I cannot quite remember, of these sessions, people were really excited about AI. I had to get budget for Copilot licenses. They were not cheap. So I said, look, I want to buy 6 licenses. And it's for the, that's on top of the one that I already had. I want to expand the team by adding another 6 members in there. We're going to call them AI champions. So it almost ran like a competition where I put out the challenge to every staff member and saying, hey, here's the challenge. I got them real excited about what the AI champions are going to do. So I explained to them they will be part of the innovation team. They will be getting access to AI resources, to licenses, to use Copilot, to experiment, to build, to showcase what they've done. But there's a catch. I need you to apply for the role. It's a job description that I wrote, and I said, for you to qualify, you need to write to me why you want to enter it. Why should I consider you? I needed to understand what their use cases were. And I was looking for examples and how they thought about how it might help them and how it will work for them and what success would look like for them. They had to agree to doing brown bag sessions to showcase to the rest of the business what the cool stuff is they've done. At the end of it, it was like, you're going to be trained, you're going to become the expert, so that people will start running to you with questions and not just come to me all the time. That was extremely successful. We had way more applications than we had room. So that theme, it was a trial that I put in place for 3 months. It was very successful. At the end of the 3 months, we expanded the Copilot licenses across the business. Some of the simple use cases were simple prompts like, what are the meetings that I have today? And can you help me prepare for that meeting? And because it's all in the Microsoft Graph, all the documentation, it can reach into my emails and understands the history of potentially some of these meetings, it could make really valuable suggestions. But for a legal team, as an example, some of the showcases that I showed them is, you get this document, you upload it into Copilot, and you can begin to have a conversation with it. It was actually coincidental. At that point in time, there was a draft legislation out for cybersecurity policies at the legislative branch of the government. And it was all in draft form, but it was like over 100 pages. So I downloaded it and in real time basically showed them. So I uploaded the document and I said, look, we're a fintech in Australia. So I gave it a little bit of a prompt again. We're a fintech in Australia, operating under APRA, all these things. How does this new draft apply to our business? I didn't review it for 100% accuracy, but that was not the intent. The intent was that within a few seconds, it spat out about 2-3 paragraphs of key changes that was suggested by this. There was a change that Microsoft did to their licensing, and we lost access to our Copilot licenses due to a Microsoft change for about 12 hours. The amount of people that contacted me saying, I've lost productivity. So all of a sudden, unintentionally, we could actually say, wow, this is actually making a big change. We also made sure that the same people in the Copilot AI champions also had access to ChatGPT. So we compared them as well. I'm not promoting anything, but we actually expanded more ChatGPT licenses than Copilot licenses in the business. People just found it more natural to interact with. The responses were faster and actually more accurate. So it's an interesting scenario, and I think it's important with the emergence of all these technologies not to bed yourself down in just one. Explore them and see how there's room for multiple ones in your organization. I'll give you a quick example of something that's really saved me, and I can quantify this as saying it's really saved me 1 FTE in the business. I mentioned that we're doing ISO 27001 compliance before. Your part of that process is when you bring on a new vendor, especially a high-risk vendor or a critical vendor, which means if something happens to that vendor, they go down for a day, your business is in trouble. You really have to have contingency plans for it. Or if there is a data breach at their services, you need to know about it because you could potentially be in trouble and you might need to do data breach notifications. So it's important that you do it and you do it accurately. We've got a standard set of about 50 questions that we ask from these vendors. Now, you would typically have a full-time information security person there who would request all this information from vendors, whether it be their third-party security attestations or a SOC 2 report or ISO certification. So based on all that information, plus their terms and conditions, their policies and their websites that they have to troll through, they have to craft detailed responses for each question. So for example, I'll give you an example of a question is, where is your data processed? So a typical workflow will be your security person will review all the documentation, will review their terms on their website and try and work out where do they say this is processed. Then they'll write a response paragraph and put citations in there. And a typical process might take up to a week. I started playing around with prompts, uploading the documents that have been provided and giving it access to the websites, explaining to it what we're doing. And this is how I started. It's much more refined now. And then I started asking these questions and I realized very quickly the responses that are coming back are instantaneous and accurate. So the first few times I went to those documents and I were looking specifically and reviewing that for the accuracy, and they were very, very, very accurate. At the moment, I've got a down pat that I can finish a complete vendor review. After I receive all the documentation, I can complete it in an hour. So there's a tangible benefit right there that I can quantify, that there's one resource that I do not need to hire in my business for that specific purpose. So I think it's important to explore, look at activities that you perform in your business that might be, they're necessary to do, but you do not necessarily require an expert for a whole 12 months to do that. So look at those processes and find clever ways to do them using artificial intelligence. Change management. So the change management really was part of the entire, call it the AI champions. AI champions and me drumming up AI across the business was part of the whole change management. Because as I said, one thing I noticed when I started just having discussions about AI with individuals in the business, unless they have a problem in their current workflow that is stopping them and preventing them from performing their daily task, they're not looking for a solution. My whole strategy, my whole vision is that it's humans working with AI, finding this friend in AI that makes you more effective in your role, that could help you achieve better results, that could be your companion at work, your co-pilot, so to speak, so that you're more efficient at your work and you're actually more accurate in your work. So that whole mindset behind it, I think, was very important for us. It's not about, hey, we want to bring in AI because we don't want to work with people. The intention is, how can we help people to enjoy their job? How can they make it exciting for them to get out of bed in the morning because, hey, I don't have to work 10 hours to get this output anymore and take a 15-minute lunch break. All of a sudden, I can do way more than I used to do and I can actually enjoy my job. I don't feel overstressed and overburdened. And we found, 16 months down the track for us now, that has genuinely been the case across the business. People are way more effective in their jobs, in their roles. They enjoy using AI. It's become quite natural to them. And nobody wants to give up any of their AI licenses. I can tell you that right now. They do not want to give it up. From an executive perspective, I didn't have any pushback because, again, I did a lot of groundwork before. I primed the ground, I made sure it's tilled, it's wet, and I made sure it's part of their mandate. They were responsible to instill that culture in the business. And I'm going to use the word culture here because I've spoken to a lot of other CTOs and executives and businesses where individual contributors, as an example, saying, hey, I've got this wonderful tool, I use it at home, I really want to use it here, but there's no buy-in from the top, so it becomes a, yeah, whatever conversation. Or people, will spend lots of money. Okay, I'll buy a license for everybody in the team. They buy 20 licenses, but only that one person uses it because, again, the other 19 in the team is like, there's nothing wrong with what I'm doing. So I think it's important to embrace the culture, and it has to, in my opinion, it has to come from the top down. I love people and I love working with people, and I want to see them grow in their roles. And if I can give them a tool, and in this case, AI, for them to be more effective and for them to have more time with their family, why wouldn't I? We've had an incredibly stable team, and our NPS scores are consistently 85 and above. People are regularly giving feedback that the ability for them to do their job is much simpler with the use of the tools that we give them. It's not just AI, we make sure that people have the right tools to do their job. But I think AI plays a big part of that, because all of a sudden, the constant feedback I've been getting from my team is that I can do so much more now. We've done a quantitative analysis on our engineering team, and so we've deployed AI across the whole engineering team. The results are actually, I think, quite authoritative. We actually found that when we started looking at the velocity that we've gained over the previous 12 months, that there were over 40% increase in velocity. Now, if you have a team of 10 people, you get 3 team members extra for the cost of, let's just say, $5,000 a year. I mean, there's not much to argue about that. When you think of AI in your business, I think there are really 3 layers, and I spoke very much at the operational layer. How do you make your internal staff more effective and efficient at what they're doing, for them to enjoy their jobs? But then there are 2 other areas. There's the AI that you build into your product. All right, so I'm not talking about chatbots. And then there is the external customer facing that you can now begin to deploy. And let's talk about them as the AI agent workforce. So I'll talk about maybe 2 internal agents that we have. These 2 agents we've actually wrote and deployed in Copilot Studio. I picked Copilot Studio due to the proximity that they have to the data. So the first agent we thought about was, from an ICT perspective, internal help desk in the business. And this is also quite a common use case you see out there, but I didn't just want another chatbot that says, hey, how do I turn Wi-Fi on? Yeah, click here. I actually wanted somebody with personality that people enjoy interacting with, that can help them to troubleshoot, that can understand our internal hardware that we have, software that we have, ask intelligent questions, and then give the user an intelligent response. And if all else fails, they will automatically just raise a ticket for the user for support and then push it out. So in come an agent that we called Hannah. So Hannah is our internal level 1 and level 2 support agent. We've grounded her knowledge on specific resources. We gave Hannah a personality. She's an Australian, she lives in the city. She wouldn't just throw a whole bunch of documents at you. She'll give you very specific information. So we've actually found that there was about a 25% reduction in tickets that are being raised in our ticketing system just because of that. We had a brown bag session, we introduced Hannah to the business, we created a Teams channel to provide support and tips how to use Hannah. Some people don't like using Hannah, other people just love using Hannah. So it's interesting, but what we've started doing as well is we started making sure that people don't just raise tickets. If they raise a ticket and go, why did Hannah not raise a ticket? Oh, I didn't bother speaking to her. Like, well, you ask her first before before we spend our time. So we slowly needed to change the culture a little bit. We started another agent called Ruby. So Ruby she understands our data. So we deal with a lot of data. We've got data warehousing, data models. So we created this data analyst in the business, gave her a personality, explained to her what a data analyst does. And by default, the large language models actually know, if you just say you're a data analyst, they know what a data analyst is. And so they know how to behave. So I started applying the principle of, these are employees in the business. So I reverse engineered Hannah, for example. So we wrote a job description for Hannah. In Confluence, we created a site called AI Workforce. So this is where I started templating. Okay, so we created a profile page. This is who Hannah is. She's currently in training. So you're either in training, you're no longer in training, so you're working full-time, you're in production, or you've been decommissioned, you've left the business, so to speak. So we started thinking, applying that same logic you'll do with any staff member to this process. If Hannah, for example, were to fail miserably and we needed to replace her, what will we put on seek.com? So we wrote the job description with key responsibilities. And that became very important for us in the end, to define the responsibilities that this role is responsible for, because that's going to be our measure of success. We also added another page in there called ROI, return on investment, because there's one thing that you can just sit there, you can have all your people in your business create agents all day, but if they're not going to provide your return on investment, then why are you doing it? Is it just because it's fun or not? Then the next one we have is a page dedicated to security considerations. What are the implications? How are we going to make sure that this agent, first of all, the data is safe and secure, it's encrypted, it doesn't leave the organization. So there's all these questions that you have in that template begin to prime you for making sure that when you get audited, and you will get audited, you can say, we've thought about this, this is how we thought about it, this is what we're going to do. Then we have another page, and I think this one is pretty important. If they make a decision, how can you explain the decision they've made? The explainable AI is what it's called. How can you explain why did it make the decision? What biases exist? What biases, how did you counter for those? So it's important to think of the bias that the agent might have. I don't think you're going to have every question that you need to answer on day one with your first iteration, but you're going to build on them. So once they go into production, they go through quarterly, 3-monthly performance reviews. And this is where the job description is so important, because if you hired them, for example, to review emails, and I'll use just that as an example, you want to make sure that they do the right thing, that they do review every email, and that they do it in the right way, that they escalate when they need to escalate. So that's important, because the outcome of the review should be, do we need further training, or this is impossible to solve, we need to decommission, aka fire the agent. It's important that you actually understand your agent workforce and that they are actually giving you return on investment, because they do cost money. They do cost money. They're not as expensive as a full-time resource, but they're there to help your full-time resources. And if they're not doing their job, it's the same as having a team member that are not doing their job. They become an impediment, they become somebody that actually holds the team back instead of propelling them forward. So we came up with what we called our AI development lifecycle. And it's an adoption of the standard software development lifecycle, but we applied it to AI agents. And this might look different for every business, but I would encourage you to think about this, because somebody comes up with an idea. What do you do with that idea? Who do you present the idea to? Once you've presented the idea, who do they present it to? Do you have an AI governance group? We've got an AI governance committee. We have a product team. So where do we start? So our AI development lifecycle, it starts with a product team. The product team look at the feasibility. They review the business case, but they make a decision right there and then. How do we move on from here? And that's important that on our product team, I've got a couple of staff members that's also on the AI governance committee, so they understand that and they know when to escalate. No, this is a sensitive agent. This is good. We want to move forward with this, but this needs to be approved by the AI governance committee. So we have a few processes where we've put guardrails in place, checks and balances. I'll give you an example of an agent that we've built that has changed a big portion of our business. I was sitting, and this is why I say it's important for CTOs in your business, your AI people, to actually understand what your business is doing. I was sitting in our office one day and I noticed that one of our staff members in the compliance team was sitting with their headphones on, sort of isolated in the corner, and I tried to say hello and they looked at me but also ignored me. And then later on during the day they came down and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't say hello to you. I was reviewing these calls." And I'm like, "Oh, tell me about that." Due to the nature of our business, all our phone conversations are recorded. But then we have compliance officers that actually review those conversations for the quality. I thought to myself, wow, this seems like an interesting use case. Within 2 hours that evening, I sat there I created an agent. The simple use case that I gave you then is, look, I just need you to summarize this. You're a compliance officer and I need you to summarize the main points of this conversation. That's where it started, and I also added a few things in there like, hey, detect what the sentiment of the call was. And within 2 hours that was all working. Blew everybody away. That evolved. This agent, it's an internal only agent, we call him Barry. And after each conversation, Barry gets notified the conversation is done. Now Barry goes and grabs the conversation, then summarizes the conversation and automatically put the summary into our CRM system. So all of a sudden, our account managers can focus on dealing with the client and getting the transaction done and not constantly typing and multitasking. We brought speed to the process, we brought consistency to the notes. We're able to instruct Barry, hey, this is what, here are a list of our competitors as an example. If they are mentioned on the call, call it out and say, well, tell us what they said about the competitors as an example. The time that it freed up for the account managers over the course of a week is the equivalent to 1 FTE. That then grew legs because from a compliance perspective, we had a very detailed QA manual. I took the manual, I used some tedious prompt engineering, but I got the manual basically in a proper system prompt for the large language model to understand. It then basically produced the gold for us. It is able to identify if a person is trying to structure a payment in a way that it bypasses compliance checks. It listens for that. When a client's making a complaint about us, it's automatically detected, escalated, and we have another agent that actually deals with complaints. The complaint case is passed on to the agent and the whole process starts there. So we've gone from one person sitting in a corner listening to these calls for the majority of their time to now the compliance people can focus on doing compliance related jobs in the business and they just look at the escalations. So one of the magic that came out of this was, and I think of it back in the day when we went from having everybody with a desktop in the business, and I'm talking about 10, 12 years ago now, and we started giving everybody laptops. All of a sudden, a byproduct of everybody having a laptop that they can take to a meeting room, we found that when we had to renew our printing contract, that we were way under our print contract, and that was not the intention. The intention was not let's buy people laptops so they print less, but that was an unexpected outcome that all of a sudden, we had to change our whole printing contract because people were not printing documents anymore, they were taking it with them. So the unexpected outcome that we had here was, because of the call summaries that were automatically now being created for the account managers had real-time feedback on how was their call rated from a compliance perspective. And they immediately started changing their behavior. Let me give you some statistics. When we launched Barry at the start, the number of escalations we received per day, there was around 40 escalations per day. We've now, after 2 months in production, we now have about 6 escalations a day. When I was speaking to the team leader the other day, he said to me, Rake, I looked at our pipeline and I looked at, our ambition to grow the business, and he said, I actually feel the most comfortable I've ever felt in my life knowing that with the same team that I have now, we can double the amount of clients without having to worry about can my team handle it. And I think that speaks to itself. If you use it correctly, and again, I'll go back to this is humans working with AI. This is not AIs telling humans what to do. We applied the principle of how can we introduce AI into the business to help our human workforce.